Hello, and welcome to the Mommy Escape Time podcast. I'm Lauren. I'm a wife and a new mom. I came up with the idea of this podcast after struggling to find mommy groups around me when my son was born. I wanted a community of mothers I heard so many of my friends talk about when they had their children. This podcast is to help mothers like me that want a community of mothers to connect with when they have their free time. Together with my usual guest, Taryn, and other mothers, we will share our experiences, not our advice, through motherhood, and hopefully get some tips from you, the listeners. So come join us on the Mommy Escape Time podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Mommy Escape Time podcast. Taryn is not with me this week or next week. I did a very special episode with a fellow or a former colleague of mine named Kristen. And Kristen has her own unique story to tell. This is all about colorectal cancer. So colon and rectal cancer. And if you can say that, I'm very proud of you. This is a tough episode sometimes to listen to. Kristen did not find out she had cancer until she had her second child, and she was 2.5 months old. So it's all about her journey, leaving work earlier than she had anticipated from her pregnancy, all the way through her cancer journey this last, or adventure, she likes to call it cancer adventure, this last year. March is Colorectal Awareness Month, which is why we're doing this episode. And I think it's really important that you listen to it. It's you might get uncomfortable about it. I understand, but it's so important to get our stories out there and understand that we all can support and help each other out. Kristen has had to completely shift and change what she is doing work-wise also, and there are definitely ways to support her. So if you listen to the episode, you can definitely follow her at Everything Kristen, Kristenk. So at Everything Kristen K on Instagram. And she also has another website, kwritingsupport.com. So you can also support her there. But it's this is important. Moms need to support each other and hear each other's stories because you never know when it's going to affect you. You don't know when something like this is going to come up. I did not that cancer and a broken leg have anything to do with each other or can even be compared, but no one expects those things to happen and no one can plan for it. So we need to start thinking about how we can prevent things in our lives so we can spend as much time with our children as we can. So next I will start her clip. It's a 2-part episode because there's a lot to talk about and there's a lot of great things that Kristen talks about in these 2 episodes. So I will start with her episode and you will hear it. So thank you very much and keep listening. So hello, Kristen, and welcome to the Mommy Escape Time podcast.
Hi, thank you.
So we have Kristen on today to talk about her, I don't know, what do you call it? A journey?
I always say it's journey and adventure. Those have a lot of positive connotation. There's definitely some negative ones involved in this, but yeah, we'll call it my adventure.
Okay, we'll call it our adventure. Yeah. So, Kristen is on today. Taryn is not on today's show, just so you guys understand. And Kristen and I are not together. Okay, so we are in 2 very separate settings. We're very technology savvy.
Yes.
Yes. So we are recording in the same state in faraway towns, so we could do this. And Kristen is on the show today to explain what it's like to be a mother with 2 kids and experience cancer and everything that comes along with that. Because your life has changed dramatically in the last 1.5 years.
It has. Yeah, it's been a year and a half now, and it's definitely turned upside down in a lot of ways.
Yes. So let's start at the beginning. So you have a family.
I do. So, yes, I'm Kristen, and I'm a wife and a mom of two girls who are 6 and now 14 months. And yeah, should I just jump into my
Yes.
story?
So so you had cancer, or yes, right?
Yes. So,
And
yeah,
you're,
and I guess, yeah, to rewind a little bit to how I got to that point. And I was pregnant with my second daughter, and it was a difficult pregnancy. I am not one of those glowy pregnant women. I I wish I was. I have friends of mine that have said that they wish they, could be surrogates or things like that. And I'm like, no, it's just not something my body was, really, obviously was meant to do, but, it just wasn't supposed to be an enjoyable thing for me. So with Lucy, my second daughter, I guess it was around 30 weeks, I developed hemorrhoids. And I'm going to be talking about a lot of things in this podcast that might make people squirm a little bit, but I've just gotten so used to talking about it that it's so natural now. And it should
and
be,
it should be
like,
natural, right?
right?
Like this is the whole
It's our
point,
body.
right?
Yeah. Let's take the stigma away. So
And let's be really clear that hemorrhoids are also part of pregnancy sometimes
they
too.
Yes, and I learned that we always talk about like those things that you were not prepared for as a
Right.
mom, or like when you're pregnant and you're like, why does nobody talk about this? And it's like because it either was so bad they don't want to relive it, or it's like there's this stigma around talking about these things, and I really want to break that because
Right.
things need to be known about. So, yeah, so I developed hemorrhoids, which I had with my first pregnancy. And I'll kind of come back to that of why I think that's so important. But I had them with my first pregnancy, and then they were terrible then, but they went away and like would kind of, show up occasionally in between like the 5 years in between the pregnancies. But they happened with Lucy again, and I didn't, get regular, I don't know what regular hemorrhoids are, but like
Right.
ones I kind of deal with, mine immediately went to the like, oh my God, they're thrombosed, which means clotted. They weren't going to resolve on their own. And I ended up going to the ER at Yale and needed to have them looked at, which is always pleasant. And they
What a
referred
fun
me to like,
hospital
yeah,
experience that must be.
one, hey, how are you, doctor? If you could look at my bum, please.
Yeah.
So I immediately got referred to a colorectal surgeon, and she is my godsend. She's an amazing, amazing doctor, and she's super tall, Icelandic. She's kind of like just the Elsa of colorectal surgery, and she took one look and said that she's a very conservative person and she would never want to operate on a pregnant person, but given what she just saw, I need to have surgery immediately. So
That
I
must have
was,
been so scary. And you were
oh, it was at
30
30 weeks,
weeks?
30 weeks pregnant, 31, I think at that point, weeks pregnant. It was, it was like, wait, what's happening? And I literally went from her office across the street to the hospital and got checked in, stayed overnight, and then was going to have the surgery the next day.
Oh, so
So,
this is not like you had any time to process the information
no,
either.
there was no time to process, prepare anything. I had literally the only preparation, which, like, luckily I had done, is that over that weekend. So this all happened on a Monday, and then Tuesday was my surgery. Over that weekend, I was obviously in terrible pain, and I had gone to the ER on the Saturday, and then that's how I got referred to my doctor. But I had gone into I'm a teacher, and I had gone into my school to make sub plans, knowing I was going to be out on the Monday for my appointment. And so I had my husband drive me, donut pillow and all, to to school. And then I had to like crawl, like basically, through the hallway, get to my classroom, And like, I'm seriously like just crying in pain and also like kind of cursing the world of like, why is this happening? As I'm on Google, like I'm uploading my files to Google Drive from
Oh
my
my
hard drive at
gosh.
school so that I could make plans. It's so sad. And that's the life of a teacher too, is that there's no
Yes.
like, I'm just going to have a sick day. It's like, no, I needed to make plans for my kids. So I got that all set, went home and had my appointment and then was immediately checked in. So I spent from the moment I got checked in until surgery, um, finishing grading and entering grades, and then also emailing everybody I work with, and then also making sub plans because I knew from my surgery I was now going to be on medical leave. So I
Right.
had to get in touch and make, months worth of sub plans too. So
Yeah.
it
Because
was
even when you're out for months on medical leave as a teacher, you still have to leave something.
yes, you have to leave something there. I mean, it's so much like being a mom, right?
Right.
That you can't just decide, like, okay, I'm just going out for the day. It's like, no, you need to leave your plans of like, here's the kid's schedule, and here's the, foods that you can do, and here's all these numbers you need to call. So I essentially did that for my over 100 and something students that I needed. So I got that set. I had my surgery, which is terribly barbaric and, as terrible as you would think it would be. And I
Now,
was
is
a
it, did they have to
I
do something different because you were pregnant?
So that's what I had to be awake during it.
Oh,
And they gave me a spinal, which I was familiar with from I've had my C-section, my first
okay.
C-section, and I ended up having another one too. So I was familiar with that process. But I mean, being awake for that kind of a surgery, and they had OB down there and had a whole heart monitor set up for the baby. So she was doing great. It's me who
Right.
is like, what is going on here? And so I had the surgery and, no fun. It was a lot of pain,
And
dealing.
how long was it?
So I'd say it probably took about like the actual surgery time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual surgery time was like an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was intense. The nurses and doctors, everybody was so great. So, I mean, I'm so thankful for that. The pain, once the pain medication and the spinal wore off, was the most,
Yeah.
I can't even say the most pain I've been in because I've been in equal amounts of pain now since then, but it was horrific. And again, having had C-sections, I don't know what like vaginal birth is like, but I know how painful I've heard it is, and I would equate it to that, I guess, that kind of pain. So,
Right.
um, yeah, that was my surgery, and I was in the hospital for, I guess, probably about 4 days after. And then the recovery was about 8 weeks. And so
Oh my
the thing
gosh.
is, that was about the amount of time that I had left in my pregnancy.
Right.
So I went on to my medical leave, and then that was going to turn right into my maternity leave. And so the healing is difficult, as you can imagine. If you think about this, is with all the surgeries I've essentially had since then. I've now kind of come up with this comparison that if you break your leg or you have surgery on your leg, you're going to, be maybe in a wheelchair, or you'll have crutches or a way to rest that area. Not that you're comfortable and not that you're not in pain, but
Right.
you can try to rest that area. When it's an area like your bum, you can't really rest that area. It's
Es-
going to be in use,
Especially when you're pregnant.
especially when you're pregnant. So that was, that adds to the healing, trying to heal part, is that it's very, it's a very involved process.
Yeah, like I don't even understand. How do you sleep?
Oh, well, I mean, pregnancy sleeping is just so uncomfortable anyway, right? That you're just
Right.
like trying to find a spot, and then you're up and down having to pee a million times. And then that's the problem, is anytime you have to pee, then your body is like, wait, maybe I need to do something else. And
Right.
so it was a very difficult end to the pregnancy, to an already difficult pregnancy. So,
Right.
but we made it, and that was what was so important, is the baby did great through surgery and through all the healing and everything. And by January, early January, is when I had Lucy, and she had her own things going on, which I think is another podcast in itself.
Right.
And so she, did super well at, like, best expectations we could have for her. But to kind of fast forward into the spring, I was kind of told that like once you have the baby, just like with a lot of pregnancy related symptoms and, different issues, you're told like once you have the baby, things will get better. And so I was kind of waiting for that, and things still weren't getting better. And I was trying to get back into running because prior to even when I was pregnant with Lucy, I was training for a half marathon, and I ended up having to cut it down. I was training for the Mystic half marathon, and I ended up doing the 10K instead, which is still a feat in itself and
Right.
it's fun. And it's like the most beautiful course I've ever run. And, but then I really didn't run through most of my pregnancy because of what was going on.
Right.
So I tried to get back into running, and I had one like successful little, slow shuffle time. And then I went out another time and I literally pooped my pants.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, it was an experience of just like my body, like I understood what it meant to be incontinent, where you could not control your body. Like it was just what is happening right now. And I was midway on a trail
Oh my
and
gosh.
had to just have this moment of like, that just happened. What do I do? And had to just like walk back to my car and find some towels I had and drive home and, clean myself up and figure out like what's going on here. And I'm like, something's not right. And beyond there being something not right, I was about 2 weeks away from going back to work from maternity leave. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do as a high school teacher? Am I going to run out of my classroom mid-lesson? Just, sorry, kids, got to go, and it's not going to go so well. So I called my surgeon in a panic of like, I need to come in and see you. And she's so great. She got me in, and, we talked about how maybe I was still needing to heal. I'd had a very traumatizing surgery, and, my body had been through a lot.
Right.
And luckily, she said, you know what, let's just, so that we can really see what's going on in terms of the inflammation, let's schedule you for a colonoscopy. And she hooked me up with a friend of hers, a GI, and this doctor was great. I met with her, and I was originally booked for a colonoscopy in July. This was March, and I was booked for July. That's how far out they're
Jeez.
scheduling them. So if you need to schedule one, do it now.
Yeah.
So I was originally booked for that point, but when I met with her and talked with her, and I was like, I'm supposed to go back to work in 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know how to handle this. She took pity on me, luckily, and cleared her schedule and got me in like a few days later. And she's like, you know what? I expect to find inflammation. You probably need some steroids, and this will get cleared up and you'll get back to living your life. Great.
Right.
And so instead, I had the colonoscopy and I had the prep, and it really wasn't, I was nervous for the prep from what everybody has talked about. And, it's not pleasant, but it's not terrible. I
Right.
can talk more
And at
about that.
least this time you could be under for the
Ooh,
colonoscopy.
I would be under and have a great nap that I'd been looking
Yes.
forward to for a long time. It really is a lovely nap. So you get the Michael Jackson drug and you go to sleep
Yeah.
for a while. And so when I woke up, my sister had brought me, and my sister's in the room. And so the GI came in, and she's this like, very professional, but smiley, kind of person, just very warm. And she walked in, and you could tell something was not okay because she looked uneasy and walked in, and she's like, we didn't find the inflammation we expected, but I found a tumor. And even from that, I'm asking questions. She's kind of just talking through things. And even after she had told me a bunch of information, I had to say to her, like, does this mean I have cancer? And she's like, well, we're waiting for pathology to come back. She's like, but from everything I know, I would say, yes, you do. And I mean, it's just shocking. I was 33 years old, and
Right.
and she was saying that she's like, the location of it, she wasn't positive whether it was colon or rectal cancer. And these are things I had never thought about. I think my only connection to maybe like colon cancer was Katie Couric's husband, like knowing that he had died of that. I
Right.
remember that years ago. But otherwise, it's not something I had thought about in the least. I mean, I don't know if that's something like,
No, I mean, when you think about all the cancers, I mean, as women, we always are concerned, like, could we have breast cancer? Like,
Exactly.
they screen that, they talk about that all the time.
Exactly.
Um,
Ovarian cancer, maybe like
right,
those kind of things. You think about reproductive cancers. And then this, I think it always just been like an old man cancer. Like that's
right.
what I had thought. So immediately from there, different appointments got scheduled. I had,
Wait,
again, had great doctors.
can I ask
Yes.
how was
Yep.
it to tell your husband?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean, the emotional side of it. I'm so used to being like, and then this is what happened and kind of just move through. But yeah, my sister was driving me home and my husband was at work and he actually was taking a half day for some reason, I think. Because he was home a little bit earlier, and I think it was because like I was having this procedure and like I was going to come home, but I couldn't really be with the baby because
Right.
it would have had been under sedation for a while. And so I remember calling my mom on the way home and just asking her to come up and not wanting to say anything
Yeah.
to alarm her or like, worry her preemptively. And so she came up and my husband happened to be there. So it was kind of like having to tell, two, and my mom and I are extremely close. So
Right.
two of the important people in my life, tell them what was going on. And so I, had to say like, they didn't find inflammation, but they found a tumor. And I'm waiting for a phone call back about getting an MRI and a CT scan, and they're going to call me with the pathology report. And I mean, it's something you never expect yourself to have to say. Like, even at this point, I still feel almost like I'm reading somebody else's story.
Right.
I'm a big reader, I'm an English teacher, and it still feels at time like it's somebody else's story that I'm just kind of telling.
Right.
And I think that became part of my coping process too, was to just like, okay, tell me what I have to do next. I'm going to give the facts, because if I go too much, I am such a what if person and always thinking about like the next thing and what could go wrong and what I've done wrong in the past and things like that. And I needed to just stay present. And so from the beginning of this adventure, I I guess I kind of became more mindful. Like, you think about how popular mindfulness is now, but I
Right.
swear a silver lining I can take out of this is from the moment I found out, I really started to become present and have to just kind of take it step by step, like minute by minute at times, because
Right.
taking it any bigger than that was going to be too much. Because it's like, I'm a mom, I have a 2.5-month-old baby.
Okay.
And I have a 6-year-old daughter, and what am I supposed to do with this? So, um, yeah, it's something I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through. And luckily I have such good support
Right.
that I knew we'd be okay with that, but it's a terrible conversation.
Right. And so at this point, you were supposed to go back to work like the next week.
Yes. So then I had to call my department chair, who's also a very good friend of mine, and tell her, like, hey, this, like, I texted her to be like, can we talk? And it's like, from that, she knows something isn't good, but
Right.
had to tell her. I, called a few close friends of mine to let them know. And it's all, I mean, having to repeat over and over and say, I'm sorry to drop this bomb on you, but I just found out I have cancer, over and over again, and then hearing their reactions. And, it's like you just have this moment of just crying with
Right.
people. And then
You're just telling it to me over again, and I'm tearing up over
yeah,
here. So,
yeah, exactly. Because I know, because it's such a weighted. I mean, you think in our society, and then when you hear the word cancer, I think everybody has different reactions, because you think of people you've known who have had cancer and what they've gone through, and so it's so loaded. Like, it's such a loaded conversation, and then all the what ifs.
right.
Because at that point, I'm like, what stage is it, and am I going to die? Like, that's
Right.
what got to. And like, I just think of my girls, and you think of like, what if I'm not here for them? And I thought a conversation I had with two of my close girlfriends at work was, I remember this Oprah Winfrey episode. My mom used to watch Oprah in the afternoons. And I remember this episode of a mom who had cancer, and she started recording videos for her daughter, because she knew she was going to die. And like, these videos of like, this is how you put on makeup, and this is how you write a check, and this is when you go shopping, these are things you can do. Like, I was like, should I start doing these things? Do
I
I need
know.
to be writing, letters and birthday cards years out and things? And I mean, then I have to rein myself in and say that technically we all could do these things because you never know.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen. And I think that's what gave me a little bit of peace, is that like nobody ever knows what's going to happen in the next minute. So like, let's not get ahead of ourselves too much,
Right.
and to just like take it step by step. So like, to ultimately bring this together, I was diagnosed with stage 3B rectal cancer. And so that meant that the tumor had grown in a certain number of layers into the rectal wall. And so that it went through like the muscle layer and fat layer and things like that. And then it also was shown to be in some surrounding lymph nodes. And so, what you have to watch for with rectal and colon cancer is that because it'll get involved in the lymph nodes, that then it can spread to the liver and the lungs, and then even the brain, because cancer likes to spread.
Right.
And so, that was then having to find out, had it spread at all, and it hadn't. Stage 4 is when cancer has metastasized. So, we at least knew I was at that point, and that this cancer is it's not only highly preventable, because of there are screenings and diagnostic tools that are out there, it also is curable when it's caught in certain stages. So there was a lot of hope early on, along with a lot of fear, but I knew I was kind of needing to jump on it. And that's what my doctors were doing. And I started chemo radiation. I did, and this is stuff I knew nothing about early on. I mean, who know? You don't know about this stuff unless you kind of go through cancer with somebody.
Right.
But I started oral chemo pills, and then I took those 7 days a week in the morning and the night.
And
And then I did,
how quick did like all your treatments start?
yeah.
Like
So I
after
was
finding
diagnosed.
out?
Yeah, I was diagnosed on March 20th. So that's coming up, my
Yes.
anniversary. Yeah, of last year. And then I started on April, I want to say it's like the 17th, that's standing out in my mind. So like
Okay.
a little under a month. And I had MRIs and CAT scans and tons of appointments and just setting things up. And then to have radiation, you have to have an appointment to basically like they do these teeny tiny tattoos on you of where
Right.
the beams will go. And so I had all those appointments. And I started the oral chemo pill, and then I had radiation 5 days a week. So I was driving to Yale every day, and I did all that for 5.5 weeks. And that's tough. Treatment is tough. It's, radiation burns inside and out, but it works. It makes you sick, but it's because I kept thinking, like, even though I'm getting sick, it's making the cancer sick.
Right.
And so that's a good thing. I had a little break, because everything has a cumulative effect. And once you stop the radiation, it's at its highest point. So then you need to kind of come down off of that, and it's still working for a while. So I had another set of scans in July, end of July. And actually, at that point, they couldn't even see the tumor. It had worked that well, which
Wow.
was amazing.
Yeah.
And then in the beginning of August, I had what's called a LAR, a lower anterior resection. And so they took about 10 inches of my combined like rectum and colon and the surrounding lymph nodes out, reconnected that. And because that area does need to rest, and we were talking about how hard it is to rest the area, they
Right.
created a temporary ileostomy, which was something I knew nothing about prior to having.
Yeah, I have
And
no idea even what that is.
yes, so an ostomy is like an opening in your body. And so there's colostomies that is like an opening. So your large intestine would empty outside of your body, like through your stomach,
Okay.
not through your stomach, through your like abdomen. And so I'd heard about a colostomy bag before, like I knew about that. And
Right.
ileostomy is using the small intestine. You can have, I think it's called a urostomy. I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, but you could have your bladder empty out into a bag.
Okay.
So I had the surgery, so that made a loop ileostomy. So my small intestine protruded out of my body, and I had what my 6-year-old called a poop bag. And I mean, she wasn't wrong. So
No.
I became like an ostomate for a while, and I knew I had to learn how to care for that and change it. And I had a visiting nurse and all of that. And that was an experience in itself too. And I can't even speaking to it right now. I'm shocked. Like, wait, did that really happen? So I mean, there's such a strong community out there. I have to say about, the positives of social media. There can be so many negatives, but
Right.
I'm in so many great support groups through Facebook and Instagram, and one of them is called Colon Town. And the people I have found are just so supportive and amazing, sharing their like highest highs and lowest lows. And there's offshoots of it where there's the main Colon Town group, there's Rectalberg, there's Third Lane, for all your different symptoms and stages and things. And so I've really connected with a lot of great people, and they are such great advocates. So they kind of taught me a lot of things, and that I could always go in and ask a question and say, like, I'm struggling with this. What have you guys gone through? And they share their experiences. So that kind of got me through the initial stages of learning how to handle these changes in my body.
And when you were diagnosed and they tell you your treatment plan, did they tell you everything? Like, first, we're going to be doing this radiation, then you're going to, have this surgery where you're going to have, for lack of a better word, this poop bag.
Yes.
And like, are they able to map out the whole thing, or is it one step at a time?
So what is great is that the treatments are very specific, and that's why it was so important to find out, I have what was considered like a high rectal cancer, like that it was closer to the colon. But if I had colon cancer, the treatment could be slightly different. So they know with rectal cancer, this is what we typically do. So they were able to walk me through everything. And that's why, especially now where I am standing, like, at this point in March, almost a year to the diagnosis day, of being like, wow, they told me this was going to happen. And then I went through that. And so I kind of knew what was up next. And
Okay.
I'm the kind of person that I really like that. I like to know what the next step is.
That's what
And
teachers like.
teachers like, isn't it? And now, class, we're going to do this. And so, yeah,
Right.
I had the next step in the lesson plan, like all along.
Hmm.
And so I had about a month after my surgery to kind of get used to my bag and to recover a bit before I started chemo. So I got my port installed, that I still have and I'll have for a while, just in case. And it
Hmm.
also makes blood draws pretty easy. So I had that installed, and then I started my chemo in September, and that went all the way through December. I had 8 treatments of a medication called Folfox, and it was done every 2 weeks, really every other week. And I guess one of the benefits with a lot of the medications that are used, this particular one, because some are harsher than others. Not that this was
Right.
an easy breezy one at all, but I didn't lose my hair. And I think there's a blessing and a curse there in terms of that, is that when people would see me, they'd be like, you look great, which is,
Right.
some people say that. Number one, they don't know what to say, so they say that. And I'd be like, I look exhausted and like I'm going to throw up all the time. But I think they expected to see me look a lot more sick,
Right.
um, possibly without my hair. And so that would be hard at times to like convey, like, thank you for saying that, but I'm really struggling right now with, XYZ. And I think the hardest things were, especially with my surgery, I couldn't lift my baby for a long time. I'm still in that process right now where I'm not really supposed to be lifting her because of the chance of hernias, because I'm recovering from my latest surgery. So it was really hard as a mom trying to navigate, you're not just a cancer patient, you're still a mom. Like, it doesn't
Right.
take away any of your other roles that you have. Like, I couldn't take maternity leave or medical leave from being a mom. Not to, but um, so yeah, it's hard, kind of going through those things. And I was definitely sick and dealing with different things like neuropathy, and that's nerve pain, and like a numbness that happens, and cold sensitivity, and all the things that go along with that medication. But um, I don't know. I kind of like worked my way through that, and I'm trying not to like make my story too long here, but
No, but that's actually good because, it's not a short journey. This was
no, yeah, you're right. You're right.
a whole journey, a whole year of your life. And it's not a simple step. It's not just like, okay, I found out I had cancer and, I went for chemo and then I was fine and, it's great. It's not a 1 day process. It's not a 1 year process either.
Exactly. Yes, it continues on. You're right. And that's exactly how it was. And I went through all my treatments and
Wait,
afterward,
I
oh
would
yeah,
like to go back to the poop bag for a second because I
yes,
know
please.
this is like the part that everyone wants to know. So,
Okay, tell
how do you
me. Yes,
like
tell me some questions.
dress with a poop bag and
Yes.
how do you go
So
out in public comfortably
yes,
with a poop
yeah, and
bag?
it's a process. And there's a lot of people in these support groups I'm in that are lifelong, permanent. They have permanent ostomies. And there's a great one. It's like Ostomy and J Pouch Mamas on Facebook is another really great group that one of my friends who had ulcerative colitis, she went through a similar process of like that kind of resection in a bag too. So it's used for a
Right.
lot of reasons to kind of give your
Right.
intestines a break. And so with that, these bags, you have to change them and you can change them. Sometimes people can go as long as a week. Maybe it's usually more like 4 days. You have blowouts sometimes. Think of like that. I had a
With the
baby in
diaper.
diapers and I felt like, here it's like almost like you're wearing this kind of diaper thing. Um, and you learn what what your system can kind of process
Hmm.
and you kind of learn like, okay, after I eat a certain amount of time, usually my bag's going to start outputting. And you can kind of like feel, do you remember the baby kick sensation? Almost like right before they kicked or turned, there was like this stretching feeling kind of in your
Yes.
stomach. It would be that, and it's like your intestines moving and getting things out. And so the bag, would fill up and need to be emptied and things like that. So I learned a lot of like where restrooms were and I always had like a kit of all of my supplies to do a bag change if I needed to.
Okay.
Um, and initially, it gave me actually more freedom than I was used to having after the hemorrhoid surgery and then even after like and during and after radiation because at that point my system was so sensitive. I was using the bathroom like 15, 20 times a day. And
Wow.
that's the situation I'm kind of in now, healing from my latest surgery. So the bag is like liberating in a lot of ways because then you're not having to run to the bathroom, which is
Right.
kind of so that was a
Which isn't what you wouldn't expect you to say that it's liberating.
yes, exactly.
You would
I don't,
like to
yeah,
me hearing about it. I just think,
like,
oh my
what are you
gosh,
doing?
I'd be so self conscious and
Yes.
uncomfortable,
Yep.
and it must be
Exactly.
horrible. But to hear that it's liberating and it's actually making
Helpful.
life
Yep.
easier
Yes.
in this situation, it
Yeah.
actually makes it seem not as bad.
Yes. And I think and there were bad days because I had, I there had been a few times that like I knew it's like you have that that sense that you're like something's not right and it's like in the middle of the night like that I had noticed once my bag just kind of came detached, which you can imagine what
Yes.
that kind of causes. And it's the same thing as getting that call like mom, in the middle of the night like
Right.
I threw up and you're like oh no. And so it's like all hands on deck and you kind of figure it out. And there were times like when I was dealing with things with my bag when that kind of would happen that I'd have that moment of like I look around and I'm like where are the adults, to help me? And then it's like oh no, I'm the adult, it's
Right.
me. And you kind of learn in that second of saying like okay, take it slow. You just have to take it one step at a time. You can do this. You don't have to do it perfect. If you mess up, you have more supplies. You can,
Right.
and you get through it. So, um, I just got used to that process. It's nothing glamorous. It's nothing I enjoyed. But they said to me that they're like by the time you get the hang of it and you feel comfortable with it we'll be taking it away, and that is exactly what happened. Like just by the time it was like oh now this thing is gone. And I kind of jumping back into the timeline of my story, I had more scans and blood work done at the beginning of January, and everything was clear. Like I was cancer free, which is amazing and what we were looking
Right.
for. And just like, wait, this happened. And from that, I was able to have a reversal surgery to kind of put my intestines back together back in my body and, open up that now my large intestine, my colon and rectum that had been really in a coma for the last 5.5 months to
Right.
put it back to work. Um, so that's where I am now. I had that surgery at the very end of January. So I'm like a bit over a month out from that now. And it's a process and it's painful. Like I said, that area, even though it rested to heal like suture wise,
Right.
that area, and again, talking about the butt, and it's something I've gotten so used to now, and to break that stigma is, that area, it is used to being dilated by your poop, and it
Right.
wasn't. So now it's having to get, stretched out again, and there's that usage of having to go a lot. And so that area gets very sore and inflamed, and the pain level initially, it's like shards of glass covered in battery acid. And I would just cry. Like every time I had to use the bathroom, I'd just cry. But at the same time, my friend was like, you know what, it's better than having cancer. And I was like, you know
Right.
what, you're right. So I would just kind of think that every time, like, could be worse, could have cancer, but I don't.
Right.
So I kind
So
of just
that's
went with
good.
that mindset. Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah.
okay, so we want to make sure that we get all of your story out there. So we're going to end this episode, but we're going to come back next week to talk about everything else because through this story, you have not been working this entire time, and
No,
that's
I
a
haven't.
year. So,
Yes.
you're not independently wealthy, so you still needed to work.
Fortunately, no. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
So,
there's
in
still
our
those parts of the story there.
right, there's definitely more. So, I would love it if everyone could go follow you on Instagram at everything Kristen K.
Yeah.
Um, and from there, you can see all of your websites and job adventures. Correct?
Yes, exactly. Yes, everything's there. I have a Caring Bridge journal and things like that to find out more. And yeah,
Okay,
that's
so we'll
it.
wrap up this episode and we'll
Okay.
start again next week, and you guys will hear all about Kristen's journey. So thank you, Kristen, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks so much.